Welcome back. 2 weeks ago, we reported from Moscow on the Russian presidential election and the failure of the media there to report the voices of the opposition. This week, a second look at Russia and how dissidents are turning to the international media to make their political case. The Listening Post's Simon Ostrovsky now with the story of a man whose appearance on the front pages a few years ago famously landed him in jail, but who's willing to go back to prison if that's what it takes to get the story out.
4 years ago, a radical group espousing both nationalist and socialist ideology occupied a ministry building in Moscow to protest the repeal of social benefits for the elderly. At the time, it was still legal to be a member of the National Bolshevik Party, and brandishing the party's stark imagery was not considered a crime. The party said the protest was akin to a Greenpeace sit-in, but when an Associated Press photographer snapped a shot of Maxim Gromov throwing a picture of President Vladimir Putin out of a window, the activist could not have known the effect this picture would have on his life. To the Kremlin's chagrin, newspapers around the world picked the photograph up. Instead of spending just a night in jail like his comrades, Maxim was arrested, tried, and sent to prison for 3 years. I met Maxim in a park earlier this month, freshly released from jail a few days before Russia's presidential elections. It appeared that he had been singled out because of the wide circulation of the photo.
That photograph was posted on all the major websites. It was used in many print publications, and then an order came straight from the top to rearrest everyone immediately, especially me.
The National Bolsheviks have earned the reputation of Russia's most radical anti-establishment group. The leftist party claims it has thousands of members, and despite its Nazi-like paraphernalia, is non-racist and non-violent. But while Maxim languished in a prison camp and Russia geared up for presidential elections, the party was declared an extremist organization by the Russian authorities, making membership an arrestable offense. The authorities didn't stop there. They went further and clamped down on the party's newspaper too.
The paper is published very infrequently and from the point of view of the Russian authorities completely illegally, for reasons that are completely clear to those living in Russia. It's because the paper writes about the National Bolshevik Party, which is one of the main opponents of the Kremlin's regime.
Despite the government crackdown, Maxim told me he planned to participate in another protest targeting the elections that were to anoint Putin's hand-picked successor, Dmitry Medvedev, as president of Russia. Was Maxim worried that the media spotlight would land him in prison again?
It's easier for me to spend a few years in prison than to remain silent. All of the most terrifying crimes are committed with the silent approval of the citizens. That's why it's a crime to be silent. It makes you complicit with all the illegal things the government is doing. It's shameful to be silent. I have kids to raise, and what kind of a country will I be leaving them?
It's a day after the elections, and as expected, Medvedev is installed as the next president. We headed for the planned location of the unsanctioned protest. Maxim has just met some of his friends, and now before the protest is scheduled to start, they're milling about and trying not to attract too much attention to themselves so that they don't get arrested before the protest takes place. Maxim told me how just before he was released from prison, he received a severe warning not to speak out ever again.
The last time they tried to break me, it was a month and a half before I was released. The way they do it is that they beat you until you start defecating. That's one of the indicators they use to know when to stop hitting you.
So Maxim is showing me the stuff that he's taking with him to the protest in case he gets arrested. He's got a shaving kit, some shaving cream, pair of socks, extra pair of underwear. So he's fully expecting to be arrested when he goes out to the protest in a few minutes from now. When we arrive at the location, I realize just how much of a media event the unsanctioned opposition protest is. It's the perfect opportunity for the Other Russia opposition coalition to get international media attention, and at the same time, a potent illustration of the heavy-handedness of the Russian authorities.
Every time a group of people start chanting the riot police, move in.
Seizing his chance, Maxim lights a flare and throws himself into the media spotlight, chanting, "Down with the police state."
Maxim is being hustled away. Break through there. Get through there. Maxim just lit a flare and has been carted away by the riot police.
I'm just going to ring Maxim to see if he's still got his phone and if he can talk to us. We saw him get carried away by the police into either that van or a van that looks like it. At me. He's in that box and they've just cut off the telephone and it's being driven away. There he is, he's waving his hand. Well, Maxim has been driven away, and it looks like his protest against Putin's government is over for today. The entire protest, it seems, had been organized for the international media from the very start.
The protest gets wide international coverage, but with no iconic image, Maxim doesn't get any special attention. The good news for him is that today, he'll spend just a few hours, rather than a few years, in jail.
More Global Village Voices now on the reporting of Russian politics, including a video from a contributor who would prefer to remain anonymous.
In Russia, the opposition is virtually inexistent. Opposition figures do struggle to make their voice heard, but the government too does everything it can to silence its challengers. If you live in Russia and you disagree with the official point of view, you can expect anything. You can be detained, thrown into jail or a psychiatric clinic. Briefly, the government has deployed all its efforts to suppress those who believe in freedom.
Despite the impression one might get from listening to the Western press, the number of journalists killed under Putin's administration has actually declined from under Yeltsin's, from 30 to 17. According to the Committee to Protect Journalists. As such, this has reflected overall crime trends in the country rather than any political dynamic.
Finally, from mission accomplished to the end of the world as we know it. RedBlueAmerica.com is a U.S.-based website that tries to bring the two polarized sides of American media together. Here they've taken some speeches by President Bush and mashed them up with a well-known tune from a band from the southern U.S., REM. The result's getting a lot of play on the web. It's our Internet Video of the Week. We'll see you next time at The Listening Post.
It's the end of the world as we know it. It's the end of the world as we know it. It's the end of the world as we know it. And I feel fine. I just got to know how I feel. That's great. It starts with an earthquake, birds, snakes, an airplane, Kemosabe, not afraid. I have a hurricane. Listen to yourself. Sure. World starts its own needs. I'm sure your own needs. Feet off long speed run. No strength. The ladder starts. Ladder with fear. Fight down. Hot wire. Under fire. Representing 7 games. Government for hire. The combat side. Left, the west coming in. Hurry with your feet down your neck. Team ID reporter battle. Trump dead or rock. Look at that low lane. Fine. Then overflow. Population. Time and food. Take yourself. It's the end of the world as we know it. And I feel fine. Some people say we're not at war. I know that. They're just wrong, in my opinion.